they had been there. They got there before we did, so they knew who we were and where we were going. And I know this for a fact. We found a big track on the trail, which normally you wouldn't find that. I think it's purposely left there for us to see. And when we got to camp, it hadn't even gotten dark when we started hearing them clacking the rocks and whooping and making these sounds. And that's when I got the tape recorder out and recorded some of these sounds that you'll play here in a few minutes. And but later that morning, I opened up the shelter door, which is just a log laying in front of these two trees. And here's this big track right to the right of our shelter door. And a lens cover off my friend's rifle was laying in the track. It was still tilted up on the track. So the track had been made before we ever got there. Now, here's a good part. All that alder that we put up on the roof that summer was dried up, except there was a piece up there, two pieces up there that had been twisted off, were still green. We found where they were twisted off over the spring. So they were actually showing us that they're helping us fix the shelter. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
But that's kind of fun. That was exciting. And that was the night, too, that I got to see one, me and my friend both, and also record those sounds that we'll play a few minutes.
Now, okay, I want you to describe what it looked like, what you did see.
What I saw was, first of all, a big scream that went on. There was also, we have a toilet just not too many yards away from, we dug a hole and took a seat up there, this private, and it was banging on the toilet seat. And if we'd have shined a flashlight, I could have saw what was going on. But we've learned not to shine a flashlight, because once you start shining a flashlight out in the woods, they're going to be gone. They don't want that. And so we didn't shine a flashlight. Like Bill, my friend, said, should we look down there? I said, no, let's not do that, because that'll get rid of them. Well, after it slapped the toilet seat a few times, it made that scream and just shot off down towards where the other two were, an adolescent and a female, we think, because I got this little voice recorded. Sometimes I think, too, that's another thing. I think the young ones are getting really curious about us, and they're getting too close. And I think maybe that's what's going on here. I don't know, because there's a family of them up there. There was, anyway. And what I saw was it running from that area down to the creek, breaking through the trees. The moonlight is a really bright moonlit night. And at 8,400 feet in the Sierra Nevada mountains, you can read a newspaper when the moon's out. It's just really bright. So anyway, I saw it run down there. That's all I saw. Couldn't tell you how big it was, but how it floated through those trees without stumbling over something, because it's really timbery up there. Then the same night, Bill, my friend, saw one down at the creek, the opening over there by the rocks on the other side of the creek, and he saw one there. So really, you can't get any good description of their face. At least we didn't. One of the Johnsons saw one night up there, and he said it was 8 to 10 foot tall, and he said it turned and just looked like they had a little hole cut in the shelter wall, or not a hole, but it spread their timbers a little bit so they could see through it. And this thing come down, and one of them turned around and said, "Hey, here's one right here," just real quiet. And he looked back, and the thing was staring right at him at that point. And that'll shake you up too, because they can hear really well. And I think probably all their senses are very keen, because they're not influenced by the byproducts of our civilization like we are. I think probably they don't have the olfactory sense that a bear does, or a dog. They're a primate. Primates don't have that. But they are very keen. And who knows what they are? I got to say that, because nobody knows what they are yet, because we don't have a clear picture of all this. What I have is my 47 years of working with this and talking to people and listening to people and my own experience to draw from. And I try to share that with the conventions where I speak.
Now, have you had people, the same thing, where they've seen one run where it went from 2 legs down to all 4s and then back up again?
Absolutely. Yeah, they do that. Yeah. In fact, there's some pictures. Somebody got a video cam of one doing that. And it's on Facebook, I believe it is. M.K. Davis. He's got some pretty good shots. He works with that stuff.
Now, I wonder what oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say Scott Nelson. He didn't see it up at our camp, but he saw one doing just that on all fours. And, I said, well, you sure wasn't a bear? No, this was not a bear. So he claims he's had a sighting, and it was on all fours. Well, but they do. They walk on two, and they run on two, or they'll get down on all fours. They got long arms.
Yeah. And, well, that's what I did notice. Okay, for the very little bit I did turn around a couple of times. Is that it ran on two legs, and then it would drop down to like 4 for a split second, and back up on 2. And I don't know how many times it did it, because frankly at that point I was just trying to get to the car, but that was enough to scare me. But then again, Ed Romans up in Canada, when he ran across one, we talked before we went on air, and it was the same thing. He noticed when it ran after him, it would run a certain distance on 2 legs, then drop down all of a sudden to all 4s, and then back up to 2. So I don't know if they have to do that or what.
I don't know that either. I don't know. I've never seen them do that. But I've heard about it for years, how they drop down on all 4s. I had a report from a guy who was hunting pigs, wild pigs, and he was up in a tree stand before daylight waiting, and he has a rifle up there waiting for these pigs to come out in the meadow, and he got a glimpse of something moving out of the right side of his eye when it started getting daylight, and it was a Bigfoot behind a tree, stalking the same pigs that were coming out into this meadow area. And he said he just would go behind one tree and then behind another, moving up as close as he could. All of a sudden, it got down on all 4s, just like you talk about. It made one big leap, hit in the middle, and then one other leap came down and just knocked this one pig right on top of the head and killed it. But it was on all 4s, he said, when it moved to prey on these pigs. And at the same time this happened, when he picked it up, put it on his arm, and started walking away with it, he heard this whooping sound. And it was another one on the other side of the meadow. And as soon as that whooping sound went on, this thing turned around, looked right at him, and then turned around again and just took off, kept going with the pig.
Well, the sound I heard when it screamed, it did, because you have to imagine, too, one side of where we're at was, part of a mountainside where a silver mine was. That's how it was laid out with that old internment camp. And there's a river, going right across there. But when this thing screamed, of course, it probably echoed it, which enhanced the scream. But it did have, it did the scream, and it did have like a weird whooping sound attached to it after the main scream. And that's what I also, that again, when you hear something like that and you're not prepared for it or even thinking about it, that's just enough to ruin your day. That's all I can say is,
Well, on my CDs, I got the whoopings. They have different types of whoops, and I think it's their way of communication, saying something. I don't know what the message is, but it's the different types of whoops that goes with different messages. And I've got different. You hear the different ones on my CDs, and it's just unique. I think it's a way of they can hide their fact that they have vocalizations, which they do, but I don't think they use it that much when there's humans around because, well, they don't want to expose themselves. They don't want, because they can sound like an owl. There's one time I thought I heard an owl. I thought, well, I'll record this owl. Excuse me, and I turned my little recorder on, and it had the speaker set so it'd be on, and when I turned it on, the mic squealed. You know how that'll happen. And all of a sudden that owl sound, which was up the canyon just a little ways, a couple hundred yards, turned into a Bigfoot chatter. And my daughter was with me at the time, but they can sound like a lot of different things. And the Dr. Curlin's report, what we was talking about earlier, a year-long study, and he got a graph in this book, and he shows where their vocal range can go inside and outside the human range. It can go higher, inside, and then lower. So they can that suggests anyway that they can mimic just about anything they want to. What they can't hide is the amplitude. It's just so loud. And I thought, well, the canyon's echoing this owl up there, but it was a Bigfoot.
Well, they probably were watching you guys, and that's how they were talking to each other. They're the same way, like I guess, like the Indians. You remember how the Indians used to do it? They used to make bird calls and weird calls to not to let us know that they were watching us. So I mean, it's probably that's how they communicate. And, when they're probably were watching you a lot more than you were trying to watch them.
Oh, well, absolutely. You don't try to watch them. You just sit there and hope something happens. If something happens, then you've got something tangible. But yeah, they observe humans all the time. You see them observing a lot of people that are cutting trees. When they clear cut and they cut trees, there's a lot of reports of these things hanging around that. And I've had several reports of people telling me that that's where they see them, is when they're out cutting property or something.
Now, there's people on Facebook, for example, putting up looking for Bigfoot, Have you ever, I don't know if you get on Facebook much, but, there's one guy that does it, and he's basically just going on like little, going in maybe a half a mile or a mile on a normal, hiking trail, which is heavily used. Are you going to run across a Bigfoot in that type of situation?
Sure. They can be wherever they want to be. Of course, if you want to get into the paranormal part, we can do that now. But I believe they can operate within and outside of our three-dimensional perception of reality. By that, I mean, I think they have access to the fourth dimension. And they can, through my book in Quantum Bigfoot, get into the science behind that. I mentioned earlier that Al Berry said if you ever want anybody to pay attention to, you got to get science in it. So I figure the only science that really answers the questions that I've had all these years about how they do this stuff. How do you hear when we're up at that shelter at 8,400 feet, 8 miles into the wilderness, all of a sudden you hear a car door slam right outside you? That doesn't make any sense. One of the guys heard a herd of horses coming down towards our shelter one time. This in the daytime, and there's no horses there, but you hear those sounds. And one time we seen this huge blue light coming down, and we lost it behind the trees, but it was definitely controlled. It wasn't like some shooting star or something. It was a controlled UFO. And I think maybe there's a connection there. A lot of reports of these things being seen around this strange phenomenon. And we've also had orbs up there, which you see those quite often. A lot of places have those. But anyway, my last adventure was that saber light rod that we saw floating by our tent. Like I said, the shelter was taken down a few years back, but we was up there year before last and had that happen to us. And that's a little concerning. You don't know if it's coming in the tent and get you or what's going to happen, but you're sitting there with just a pea shooter and you got really not a lot of protection.
Yeah, that would be the scary part, not knowing if you whatever you have is going to be enough protection. On one of the old Art Bell shows, there was a guy who claimed that him and a couple of his friends were hunters. They were going out and doing what they were doing, and they basically said that they ran into a Bigfoot. It was aggressive. Cut the story short, they basically shot and killed the Bigfoot and its mate and buried it, but they said that it took numerous shots to kill it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if you could, Art kind of halfway believed the story. I listened to it, and it's maybe possible, but then I don't know.
Well, they said it looked too human, and that's the reason I think that they buried it, because they're afraid they was going to get in trouble. That's the story I heard anyway. I know if it's the same one.
Yeah, it's the same one. They were worried about, the authorities,
Yeah, I have a lot of people tell me they've shot him. In fact, this was named down at, I think it was named down in Oregon. Right at Mount St. Helens or Ape Canyon. His name slips my mind right quick, but he claims he shot one point blank. It was a mining. It was 1924, same as the year as the Osmond incident. And he went back in. They took a whole posse out there because there were several miners that were being tagged. It's called the Ape Canyon now because of that. He claims he shot one point blank. He's seen it fall and everything. And they went back and couldn't find the body. In fact, I just posted this on my Facebook, how I explained that through the fourth dimension. that possibly if they have access to that, and if you realize